I think this is the message that the church people or faith communities in the country are trying to send across, that by naming or by red tagging and you start labeling someone as terrorist, you are actually equating terrorism to the legitimate people's movement, to the legitimate people's demand. You are now diminishing the collective demand of the people who are suffering for the longest time from poverty, landlessness, and lack of national industrialization in the country.
So one thing we're wondering is, as a church leader, why do you think there is an ongoing civil war in the Philippines? And what role do you see the church playing in that conflict?
Why is there ongoing civil war in the Philippines? We think it is the poverty, perpetual poverty, historical neglect of the people, the lack of basic social services. These are the reasons why people wage war in the country. The people have become, especially the poor majority, have become desperate about their conditions. And we believe that as long as there's a wide gap between the rich and the poor, the landed and the landless, their conditions would remain. And so they have to take an action that will destroy or would erase, would end that system that further their conditions. Yes, and if it means waging war, then some of them are resorting to taking up arms to change their conditions. The role that the church people or the faith community has been doing throughout the years since the peace talks has started in the 1980s, we have been accompanying the peace process that's ongoing between the GRP or the Government of the Republic of the Philippines and the National Democratic Front of the Philippines. So in multiple capacities, we have been accompanying the peace process, and we have been conducting education among our people, among the faith communities, and on the importance of a principled negotiation and a just and lasting peace in order to address the roots why people are waging wars. So the notorious Executive 70 or EU 70 now puts the whole peace framework of the government to this whole of nation approach, which essentially just mobilizes all government agencies, whether it's military or civilian agency, to pour its resources, efforts, programs to end armed conflict in communities. But its framework is localized peace talks, which on the ground, it means pacifying the people, forcing them to surrender their arms, or to civilian communities, it means more violence. But when we say peace, it must be a peace that, based on the genuine development of the people, where the civilians are living sustainably in their communities without fear or threat to their lives and livelihood, without hunger, without suffering, and without the violations that are happening on the ground. This happened a few days before I came here. But this is the Fausto family. Now, 4 of them, the couple or the parents and 2 of their children, have been killed by, we believe, are the military. For so long, they have been treated as New People's Army, so they were subjected to red baiting or red tagging, whatever you call it, and intense harassment intimidation for the longest time. So until the day that they were killed. So that is how human rights violation is happening in the Philippines. Yeah, the church people have not been spared by the red tagging. So there are faith leaders and church institutions that have been suffering from the brunt of the red tagging that is happening in the country. So, and there are also political prisoners who are also religious leaders or ordained ministries. So these are faith leaders who are accompanying the people in their quest for environmental protection, for self-determination for the indigenous people, and for the just living wages for the workers and land for the farmers. I don't think it is difficult for me to establish a link between my faith as a person who have grown up in church and literally being brought by my grandmother to church. I always say this, that it is the church that taught me and brought me to where I am now and find my calling in serving the poorest of the poor.
Given the increased U.S. presence, can you tell us what are the Balikatan exercises and what has been the impact of these exercises on the people, especially potentially some of your congregation members? And then we'll just go with that for now.
The NCCP for so long have been opposing the U.S. intervention, direct military intervention in the country, be in whatever forms of military assistance, Balikatan exercises, the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement, because all of this, what it means on the grounds is just violations. As one concrete example, of course, we have heard about what happened to the case of Pemberton, a U.S. military soldier who had sexually assaulted and later killed a transgender Filipina, Jennifer Laude, and many other forms of sexual assault to women, and other surveillance. It also means continuing harassment to civilian communities, violations of international humanitarian law like hamletting, and the destruction of livelihood in communities. So all of this, although they are being done directly by the Philippine military, but all of this are being strengthened and supported of the ongoing cooperation between the Philippines and the United States. Join us, the NCCP, in calling for the Philippine government to stop the killing and the attacks, reaccede to the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court, scrap the counterinsurgency program, free all political prisoners including the church people who are in jail, abolish the National Task Force to End Local Communist Armed Conflict, repeal the Anti-Terrorism Act, and resume the peace talks between the GRP and the NDFP.
Long live the Filipino people!